And 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, and welcome to Fireside Chat number, whatever number this is. I always forget. Hold on. I'm going to tell you in just a second. Number 74, where we are joined by YouTuber. Well, YouTuber, your name is Desirae, right? Is that correct?
Okay. Yeah.
And your channel's called Yes, and your channel is called Just Thinking Out Loud.
Yes.
All right.
Correct.
All right. So before we start talking, the first thing I want to do is I want to talk to the people that are watching. Let us know if everything sounds okay. Looks like people are responding positively, so they can see us and hear us just fine. So, Just Thinking Out Loud is a YouTube channel that I found. Ooh, it was a few months ago. I want to say it was in the summer of last year, or maybe early spring, right around the time that the whole Rage After Storm drama happened. And I wasn't looking for your channel, but I was watching other people's responses to it because I was sort of gauging what people's thoughts were on all that. And YouTube was just telling me to watch you. It was like, here's somebody you might be interested in watching. So I looked, it was like you were doing this from your car, and you were just sort of giving your thoughts. It was kind of like a bit of a stream of consciousness video. So I saw it. I thought it was pretty cool to see people chiming in. This is the thing that I really find myself attracted to, is the idea that people can entertain things and discuss them. So regardless of where they fall on it, maybe they're still leaving things open, like they're, oh, I don't know how I feel about this, whatever, but they're talking about it and they're trying to work it out. And I appreciated that. But the content doesn't quite relate to Honey Badger Radio's content, so it was just something I was interested in. Then somebody, who may be one of our patrons, went to Allison, and Allison is the person who runs Honey Badger Radio, basically, and said, get this girl on your show. And so Allison came to me, and she says, can you get this girl? And I said, sure, I'll try to do so. So now we have you here, and now I'm trying to figure out why. So this is a bit... we both got to figure out why you're here, but I think it could be fun. Okay. So Desirae.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
It's okay. Yeah. You don't know much about us, so we're going to try and do this as sort of like a, maybe this will be a two-way interview. So how about I let you ask any questions you have of us first?
Okay. I first want to say, though, because you just said that video that I did with me driving the car, it was, I think you're talking about the one where I was talking about race and IQ, and I was just kind of going over my feedback or response to the information. That was not a response to Rage After Storm's video. That was something I recorded, I don't know, maybe like 2-3 months before. But it was obviously pertinent to that Rage After Storm's video, but it was not a response. It doesn't really matter. I just want to clarify, so I'm not letting you.
No, that's fair. That's fair. It was something that YouTube sent my way after this stuff. So your video probably had been up for a while, and then YouTube sent it my way. So.
I am very curious. I just got, someone reached out to me and was like, hey, come on the show. And then I like went over to your channel. I looked at it and I was like, okay, this looks interesting. I think I'd like to go have a chat. And the only thing I've seen was you have a lot of videos that seem to talk about gender and feminism and that kind of stuff. And that's the only thing that really stood out to me that's in my memory right now.
Yeah. So our channel is, we are a men's rights channel. Came out of the Honey Badgers. Let me back it up a little bit. The Honey Badgers are what many people consider or call female men's rights activists. Now, obviously, I'm not female, but I am one of the Honey Badgers. So the reason is because originally the Honey Badgers were Allison Tiemann, Hannah Wallen, and Karen Strawn. You may have heard of Karen Strawn. I don't know. Do you know who that is?
Yes. She commented on one of my videos recently, and I was so happy. I was like, oh my gosh, she commented on my video. She doesn't know that. But yes, I do know of her.
Okay. So yeah, those are the three most famous Honey Badgers. We've had other people that were Badgers throughout the years. But a little bit about my story, and this is the part that I think is kind of interesting, because I think yours might be similar. I originally was working, using social media on the internet to promote my art. I didn't actually intend to make videos like this. Originally, I was just like, I'm a illustrator and a comic artist and a designer, and I was doing that. And I found that I liked a lot of the stuff that the Honey Badgers talked about. So I wanted to help them with artistic content. So I would make little editorial pieces for their written articles and whatnot. I would make artwork for it. And then for whatever reason, Allison asked me to come on the show because I had a personal anecdote about a graphic novel series I was working on, and it was about male romance. It was about like a romance story from a male perspective. And I got a lot of trouble for it from feminists in my college that didn't like the idea that I was writing a romance from a male perspective. It was really strange. So Allison said, why don't you come on the show and tell us your story? So I did. And then after that, I guess they liked my voice and they said, you know, we want you to keep doing shows. Or like, first I was on as a regular guest. Then I was basically like, you know, hosting them. And now I basically just host most of them, you know, and I have my whole setup. So I started off as an artist and I ended up doing this. And I think that that was your situation too, right?
Yes, it was my situation. I will say though that I have always been like into intellectual topics, but my purpose for coming on YouTube was definitely not at all to do with this. And it was sort of a situation where I just put a video out there, you know, and it's funny because that video that you mentioned has so many views, but that was probably the video that I did not plan whatsoever. I was just rambling, you know, like I did like look at the information. I wasn't like totally blind, but I wasn't really prepared for it. And then it started like my channel just like I think I had like 30 subscribers, and then I went back one day and I had 500 subscribers, and I went back again and I had like 2,000 subscribers. It was something like that. I like wasn't. It was just kind of like a surprise. And then I was like, oh, actually, this is nice because I feel like I have so much to say. Mm-hmm. And then there were some things that I was passionate about. And so I started making videos. And I think that's died down a little bit for me. But I still think there's more, you know, for me to talk about. That I know.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly the same. Like I've always had an interest in these things, but I didn't know that I was actually going to be given like the opportunity to have this kind of platform. So I'm pretty thankful for that. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. So what kind of art do you make?
This is actually my art behind.
Oh, okay.
See. You probably can't make it out.
It's a painting. It looks like is that an animal? A butterfly on a cocoon.
It's a butterfly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, what did you say?
Well, I was saying it looks like a butterfly coming out of a cocoon, right? Maybe?
Mm-hmm. No, it's just a butterfly that's, yeah, it is a butterfly, and it's sort of landed on a leaf, and the contrast is very poor. That's why you can't make out what it is as clearly, which it should be better. But yes, you are correct. That's what it is.
No, I got it pretty close. I just sort of, I filled in the blanks. I used because I see a butterfly on something that is leaf shaped. Yeah. But then I thought, what if that's the cocoon actually, and it's coming out? So, but I guess it's just a leaf. But still, it's pretty.
Yeah, it's just a leaf. But I can answer that question a bit more. I make mostly portraits. That's my main thing. That's what usually makes people go, oh wow, portraits, you know, like that's what I do. And I started out being super realistic. The work I do now is not as realistic as I used to be. It was like very, very detailed stuff, mostly drawing. And then I guess in college, I sort of transitioned into painting a lot more. Not that I've never painted before, but I started playing around with doing abstract art, I think, and that really helped me sort of loosen up a bit in the kind of art I was making. So I still do very detailed things sometimes. I would say I'm enjoying more, I now enjoy the process of painting more than before, where it was more the process of creating an image that looked a certain way.
Yeah. Okay, I dig it. I do, mostly my art is cartooning. I also try to do some realism. I find that with the people that typically ask me to do work for them, if I make a cartoony interpretation of their portrait, they love it. They love it. They just want to look. They want to feel like Disney characters. So I've learned how to do that for them, and they absolutely love it. But I have a lot of fun with the cartooning. I want to get into more sort of expressionist style work. One of my favorite painters is Toulouse-Lautrec. and not the stuff. No,
I want to look him up right now.
Oh
no, I'm
yeah,
bad at that.
absolutely.
I'm gonna look him up while I'm talking to you.
Yeah, look him up. But here's the thing about Lautrec. The stuff that he's known for, which is these like posters that he did for the Moulin Rouge, those are not the paintings I like. The stuff that I love is the stuff that he made. They're paintings of inside the Moulin Rouge. They were just sort of like he would just be in this bar and he would just paint the scene that was in front of him. And he did this style that was very expressive and almost like caricature, but the people were very, very believable. So I really like his work. He's one of my favorites. Another one is, I'm trying to remember his name, but I'm a big fan of Hieronymus Bosch. If you don't know who that is, you should look him up too. He did these biblical paintings back in medieval times that often have like people getting raped by demons and stuff, but it was a lot of fun. It was like a really, I know that sounds dark. Let me put this another way. He would make these extremely like they were these
my friend has a poster,
like
a whole poster in her living room.
But Bosch is great, and there's also there's the guy, he was one of the like the time of Salvador Dali, but not him. There was another man who did these kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I always forget the names of the various eras, but he's famous for this painting of a man whose face is blocked out by an apple. You know the one he's got like a derby and a suit, and that guy. So I forget what that's called, but that style, but it's about like painting your dreams and these dreamscapes, and it was good too. So, but that's the kind of stuff I like to make. So any other questions you have about us, or did I not answer your question satisfactory enough?
No, you did. I know you want to talk to me about my content, but I actually wanted to hear more about that story that you wrote, the male romance from the days of the guy.
You want to hear about that?
I don't at all understand why that would bother people at all, since there's
weird.
You know, like guys who fall in love. Like why can't they write the story?
I know, it's crazy. So my book it's called Good Guy. I'm actually I finished 3 issues, and I'm currently printing issues 2 and 3. And what it is essentially it's an autobiography. So I have gone the full gamut of sort of like sexual and romantic experiences from my life as a teenager, based on what I learned about romance at that time, which I didn't know anything about anything because I was like 15 or 16, all the way up until where I am today. So what I wanted to do was, it was sort of like a little bit of an exercise for me to try to find everywhere that I made mistakes, and also to sort of show people, you know, how hard it can be for men to find romance, you know, and how we also face difficulty. Because one of the things that I notice about many romance stories is they're often told from the woman's perspective. And I don't have a problem with that, since a lot of the time women tend to be the ones that like to read romance, right? So I wanted to try to challenge myself and do something from a male perspective, because I find that, I'm not saying they don't exist, but they tend to be rarer, right? Oh, one of the things that I took inspiration from were shows like The Wonder Years, which kind of talk about that. It was a TV show from the 1980s. That's okay. It was a TV show from the 1980s from the perspective of the main character, who was a little boy. And he grows up throughout the show. And, you know, there's this like one girl that he's been in love with. And anyway, I was just going about that. But I was still figuring out how I wanted to go about this. And I was doing this while I was in art school. And I decided that I would make the first issue of this book my final project for one of my classes. This way I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So I told my teacher, there's like, okay, I'm going to make issue number 1, my graphic novel. I told her what it was about. I titled it Good Guy. Now I have a good reason for this. One was because when people think about comic books, which is what this is, a lot of times they think of them, like the characters in them, in terms of good guys and bad guys. So I thought it'd be a play on words. However, more importantly, I wanted to distinguish to people who were readers the difference between good guys and nice guys, because I think that those are very different things. And I want to challenge men to try to be good guys rather than nice guys. If you have any questions about that, I can go into that. Or if you know what I'm talking about, then we can just move on.
I would like you to go into it, but I don't want you to. I want you to go into it, yes.
Okay, I'll go into it. Okay. So a nice guy is a guy that has either been conditioned to believe or believes, for whatever reason, that if he is nice to women, they will like him. So if he does things for people that are generally selfless, and he is always polite and always, behaves in a sort of a chivalrous manner towards women, that they will like him for it. Like he will get in return affection, right? And a lot of times there are men who will do that, like, because they don't know what works, so they figure they will be nice. It's sort of like, and Karen made a great video about this, where she talks about, male primates that will groom female primates in the hopes that they will return affection and mate with them, but it doesn't work for them, right? It just doesn't. Women don't tend to respond to just that. And so the problem with being a nice guy is this. Being a nice guy is like wearing a mask. It's not really what you want to do, but it's what you think you have to do to gain favor with a woman. Being a good guy means that you will treat people with the respect that they are deserved. So you don't just give it to them for nothing, and you will hold people accountable, but you do it in a way that is constructive. So it doesn't mean that you're mean to women. Like there are lots of men that have had bad experiences in relationships, and they may say, oh, she only dates bad boys and assholes, and pardon my language, but that's an example that they might say, right? And the fact is, that's not entirely true. There are women that may not know the difference between, a good man and an asshole. There are some that may not know the difference because they haven't had an example of what a good man looks like. But I think that it's easy to conflate an asshole for a good guy that holds women accountable, that treats them with respect, which means you have to do more than just kowtow to them. So nice guys do whatever they think they need to do to get women to like them. Good guys don't. They do what they think that people, not just women, but people deserve, and they actually have standards of behavior they expect from others, which is the way anybody should be. So this isn't even a gender-specific idea, but this is how I was approaching it. So I wanted to sort of talk about that, because it was something that I had discovered was... And it's actually easier to do in many ways to just simply behave as an adult towards women, and they will find that you don't like them unconditionally, but rather that they have to earn it, and that actually makes women more attracted to those men. It actually ends up working out that way, because I think that in many ways that's what a lot of women do want. I'm sorry, you're going to say.
Well, I mean, I hear you say it. Like I was just thinking, it just sounds fake. Like you're not being yourself, and people can definitely pick up on that.
Yes, being a nice guy is not. But that's right. Being a nice guy is fake. Now, I'm not saying there aren't men that aren't nice in their nature, but my point is, don't be a doormat, right? Because if you are one in the hopes that it will cause women to like you, it doesn't work. Actually, yeah, because they won't respect you. I had
that. Not like a doormat, but like just like someone who like sort of rolls over for you all the time. It's completely unattractive, completely for me at least.
Absolutely. And it's the thing. So I brought it up. I didn't explain all that with the title because I didn't think anybody was going to, get upset over my idea. But when my instructor, who was a man, he explained what I was doing to the class, because we were all talking about what our projects were. Well, there were some, college girl feminists in class, and they had questions. And they had a lot of questions. They asked me when they thought... They presumed that because my book was entitled Good Guy, that it was about the nice guy syndrome, which is what feminists call that, which for them, it comes down to something far more nefarious and sinister. Like, I think that men who are nice guys behave that way because they're looking for affection, and they think that this is the way you get it. And maybe it's because if someone treated them that way, they would actually have affection for people because maybe they're not accustomed to getting it, right? Does that make sense? Like, if a girl is nice, have you ever been nice to a guy and you're not really trying to do that, but he has a crush on you suddenly? Like, there are men that respond to niceness with...
Yeah, sometimes you have to not be nice because you can't give the wrong message. It's kind of sad. Because I remember before, like, puberty, like, I remember not having to do that and then having to learn to do that as I got older. To, like, not give the wrong impression.
Yes. Yeah. It reminds me of a film, and if you haven't seen this, and you really should, have you ever heard of a movie, came out in the 90s, called There's Something About Mary?
No, sorry. I don't know any of these things you keep mentioning.
I know. How old are you again?
I'm 25, but I'm also not from the U.S., so that's a lot of cultural references are lost.
Yes,
like the major ones, yes, but like some of them, no.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So I mentioned that because if you guys are watching the chat, have you ever seen There's Something About Mary? The premise of the movie that I think is actually really great is Mary is this girl that all these men in the film are in love with. They believe that they are just madly in love with her and they want to be with her. And there's some stuff in it that I disagree with that they do in the movie, but the main thing the takeaway that I get from that film is those men in that movie don't actually love her. They just love how she makes them feel about themselves. And this is what I think a lot of guys who end up being nice guys experience. So if a girl is nice to them and makes them feel good about themselves, they get addicted to that feeling. They want to feel good about themselves, so they want to be closer to this woman. So they return the niceness. But maybe this woman's accustomed to people being nice to her, which is why she's nice to others. So she doesn't see it as romantic, but they do. So there's like, it comes from, if you deprive people from, if you deprive people of kindness and of compassion for long enough, they can see the smallest gesture as something so meaningful that there's a disproportionate way of looking at it. So from the other person who might be accustomed to people showing them kindness and graciousness, they may not see it as romantic because they get it all the time. It's sort of like, how delicious is a glass of water if you haven't had one in a long time versus somebody who has, they get to drink whatever they want. So this is where, I guess, to try to bring it back to what I was talking about, because I know I can be kind of rambly. This is But
can I pause you? I pause you actually, because I feel like this part will be lost. I think what you just said sounds pretty awful, because I was just saying sometimes you have to withhold that to not give the wrong impression. So it's like they can't find that anywhere,
Well, but it's important. So it's like I agree with what you're saying. I agree, because they have to realize that the thing is, I think the only thing that's worse than somebody shooting you down or, being like not as nice to you as they normally would because they don't want to give you the impression is someone who is behaving that way and giving them and stringing them along. But I wouldn't even use the term stringing them along, because a lot of times people don't know they're doing it. They're just being themselves, and it happens to have this effect. So I think that it's actually better to, try not to send the wrong signal. Or even better than that is just to be really upfront and say, look, I don't want to give you the wrong impression. But, this whole communication is hard, because you sometimes you don't know, what the other person is thinking when you act, and all you can do is just be who you are. And if this conflict of interest surfaces, then you have to just tackle it. But I think honesty is the best way forward. And that's why in my book, I wanted to try to address this with men, so that, because I think that men, especially young men today, they need somebody to show them compassion and let them know that people care about what happens to them and who they are. But we have to do it in such a way that doesn't send the wrong signals, that, that somehow this means that we have a vested interest in their happiness outside of, just in general, right? So I care about men. I think that all the honey badgers care about men. So, and especially the kind of people that we tend to attract, some of them are men that have, you know, they know a deep and severe loneliness that comes from a society that, you know, tends to push them away or medicate them or treat their maleness as some kind of a disease. So we want to help them. However, we have to help them just enough so that they can help themselves, which is the ultimate goal. And that's why I say, you know, I tell people, don't be a nice guy, be a good guy. Because if you're a good guy, then you can like have you'll have like self-respect, and you'll have the ability to respect others, and they will give that to you. And you'll know the difference between someone who's actually interested in you and someone who's just being kind to you. That way you don't need other people to make you feel good about yourself, which is where that you get this there's something about Mary sort of, you know, issue. So I don't know.
And how did that relate? How did all of this tie into writing your book and the feminists asking their questions?
The feminists didn't like what I was doing because they thought that I was promoting this nice guy syndrome, which in feminist eyes, the nice guy is a man who feels entitled to sex from a woman. They have a very, very distorted and twisted view of what the nice guy syndrome is. In their mind, it comes from selfishness, possessiveness, misogyny. You know, it means that they don't like women, and that they're just seeing them as objects, and that they feel entitled to their love and affection. That is most of the time not at all the case. They are experiencing unrequited love or unrequited affection. They don't know the difference between someone who's just being kind and someone who genuinely has interest. And worse than that, they are often and can at least easily be taken advantage of by women that know this is a man who likes me. I can, you know, exploit him for whatever. And this happens in the same way that there are, you know, this happens in the form of women who use men that they know have sexual interest or romantic interest in them as emotional pillows whenever they have a breakup, or they just want to dump their emotional baggage on somebody or whatever. And I want to tell men, you know, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Not that, you know, if you want to do it, then go ahead, but you don't have to do that. You know, and I think with feminists, it's always about shaming men. With me, it's like, I want to liberate people as much as possible. And I think that in terms of discussing romance with men, I think that they need a little bit of attention and care and compassion. And feminists don't want to give it to them. So these feminists in this class were not happy with what I was doing. And they were constantly trying to make me look like somebody who hates women with their, you know, like they would ask me things like, why do you use guy in the title? Couldn't this be about women or people of other genders? Why are there no LGBTQ, you know, romances in the story? And I was like, well, because this is about me.
Your story.
And
like
and I'm hetero.
I
know. But, you know, they were trying to do that in a way to say, well, why is your story more inclusive? How is it different? They thought it wasn't different because
it actually, hold on a second. That doesn't make any sense because, like, as you said, there aren't many stories like yours. So when you're writing your story, you're like bringing more inclusion by bringing your voice out that wasn't really there before. I think. So to me, that's like a total contradiction of them saying if they said something like, it's not being very inclusive. It is.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Well, yeah.
What I'm hearing you say.
The feminist definition of inclusive means not men. That's what that means. It's just like like the you know how it works. Of course it doesn't make sense, but this is my story. And I thought it was really weird because I didn't think anybody was going to come after me for that. I didn't think there was anything about what I wanted to do that was at all controversial. But apparently caring about the way that men experience romance and trying to talk about it. And hell, there was something in there for the ladies too, because maybe there are women who are just like, I don't understand men in relationships. I don't understand the way men see romance, you know? So, but no, I actually
would like to understand that more now that I think about it. Like that's something that, like, I have some curiosity you know, like what the story would be like, because I don't know many romance stories, as you said, written from the male perspectives. There are like very few that I do, but they were more not about what you're trying to explore, but more about like adventure or something. And then the romance was just like a little thing. It was like a guy who wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very different from what you're talking about, which sounds very interesting to me.
Yeah. Okay, so real quick, I got a super chat. I got to get through these because they disappear. Joey Jojo gave us $5, and he has a story. He says, a woman I liked pretended to like me, then used me to get money from me, and then had her boyfriend beat me up afterwards. I hate when I become attracted to women. Well, you see, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you just, you got to know, like, I have a friend who was in love with a girl that he stayed friends with in the hopes that one day she would notice him. And it never happened. I know it was no. It was so painful for me to go through. I was like, dude, you have to stop, because she was using him. She was using him for emotional support. And I was like, you have to stop. This woman does not care about your feelings. I'm sorry. It sounds cruel, because if she did, and she knew that he liked her, she knew it, but she kept him around as a friend anyway. And then she would go date some other guy. And of course, you know, that would go south because she was like attracted to men that were not good for her or whatever. And again, I'm not claiming that she deserved my friend. I think that my friend was too good for her and he shouldn't have stayed with her. But he tried and it didn't work. And I said, I told you. And I told him multiple times, get out of there, get out of there, get out of there. Guys, if you are friends with a girl and you think that she's going to like you one day, just don't. Just get out. Find out early as possible. Like if you meet a girl, okay, sometimes this happens. You meet a girl and you're attracted to her right away and that's why you want to get to know her. Well, try to be as upfront as possible right off the bat, because you might as well know whether or not you have a chance, you know, right off the bat. If not, because sometimes, but sometimes this happens. Sometimes you meet a girl and you're just friends and you don't really think about them in a romantic way. But then you hang out with them more and more and their personality makes you attracted to them. Maybe you guys share enough interests, and so you might grow. Sorry, I hit the microphone. You might grow to develop a crush or an infatuation or even attraction. If you do, it's still a good idea to just be upfront and say, look, I know we were friends and I enjoy our friendship. However, I'm afraid that I've crossed into, you know, I want like another layer of intimacy between us that I never felt before. Like this is something that I want, but I don't want to move forward with that unless it's something that you want too. If she says no, then I'm afraid that you're in a really bad position, because you could try to stay friends, but I think that it's going to be punishingly difficult. What I did when this happened to me, and this is one of the stories I would want to tell in my book, what I did if it was me, was I would say, okay, so clearly we're at an impasse. I want something you don't want, but we started off as friends. I'd like us to be friends again, but right now I can't be around you, right? And I just can't, because I don't want to be in your presence while you're dating other people. So I'm just going to, you know, this isn't like because I don't like you. This isn't me. Like, you know, I just think that if I stay around you, this situation is going to get worse. So I stopped talking to her. I stopped hanging out with her. Nothing personal. And then maybe, I don't know, like 6 months or so later, we were hanging out again because I got over it. You know, I moved on. I started dating other people. And she did too. And we're still friends to this day. Because I walked away, right? And I think that's what you got to do. I think that if you try to have it both ways, or you think, well, I'll just stick it out and stay friends with her or him. If you want to reverse the sexes, you can do that too. I think that's you're just going to put yourself through unnecessary heartache, and you might as well just like back away, because sometimes a little bit of distance between you two can actually, maybe you just realize, oh, you know what? I think that was just an infatuation or a crush, or I met somebody else or whatever. And I think that's better. You know, that's my personal view. So yeah, I got a lot of crap for doing my Good Guy comic from feminists, and even my instructor started to ask me, you know, propose these ideas. Like, yeah, why don't you do an LGBT story? And I was like, because I'm not gay. You know, how can I like? Yeah, it was really weird. So that was how I ended up getting on.
Honestly, really weird.
Yeah.
It's like, let me just shove these like experiences and identities at you, not for you to appreciate them or learn from somebody else, but to the point of silencing your own.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like it takes it way too far.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's the story of my web comic, Good Guy, which is now a print comic. And yeah, that's how I found myself to be doing this show, to be honest.
How long ago was it? And is it still finished? Like, I'm confused because you talked about the web comic.
I haven't. And then the book. Yeah, first I had it was on. Yeah, so it was online for a while, and then I took the webcomic down because I wanted to print it. I did not finish. I'm on issue number 3 of God knows how many, because it'd take a long time. I just found myself. I was working on the books, and then I graduated from college, and then I got testicular cancer, and so I had just stuff that happened that I had to deal with in my personal life. Then my dog died, and I'm not kidding. This all happened. Then my dog died. Then so it's when it rains, it pours. So I'm sort of getting back. Yeah, I'm getting back into doing the shows again, and I'm hoping to get back into creating art again soon as well. So yeah, it's all about that. But I enjoy I enjoy talking about the stuff I do in the book, and I'd like to explore some other things. Like I want to make a comic book story with a female. I want to do a superhero story with a female, but I want to try and tell it in a way that I don't think other comics have done female characters, or at least not in a long time, where they simply treat them like anyone else, or even try to approach.
Oh my God, that would be so refreshing.
Wouldn't it?
Oh my God,
wouldn't it?
It would be so refreshing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. This is so I'm so glad you said that, because it's like I bring that stuff up and people are like, "What are you talking about? What do you mean?" No,
it's really annoying. Actually, can I interrupt you? I'm not going to say
go ahead.
Hair,
go ahead. Say
but
it.
I was thinking about making a video on the Wakanda movie. And I'm not going to get into my opinions here, but I was thinking of making a video.
You don't want to talk about Black Panther? Because we could talk about Black Panther.
Not right here, because I feel like I want to save it, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make the video, because part of me is like, I don't know if this is worth it. I don't want to receive like all the crap from people in my comment section. Like, I don't know if I want to do it, but I just want to live my life not being a statement. Like, I just want to be a normal person. I do not want to be a statement. I don't want the way I dress, the way I wear my hair to be a statement. I just want it to be like me and normal. Like, that's what I wish, which kind of gives you a view of what I think, but I don't want to get into it. Sorry.
I could put it up to the chat and ask them if they'd like us to talk a little bit about Black Panther. Or we don't have to actually talk about the film itself. I can leave that out.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen it.
Everything around it.
It's not important. Actually, it's not important. I saw it, but it's not even like the film itself is not the important thing. I think what we're talking about is the thing that would make it greater. So somebody said, I prefer you don't. Somebody said, talk about Black Panther. Well, we don't have to. I mean, it doesn't have to be about Black Panther at all. It's just the idea. So okay, this is what I'm going to say. So I'm not really talking about Black Panther specifically, because you can apply this to lots of stuff, like the 2016 Ghostbusters movie, other things. Okay. What I'd like to see is, I think that one of the reasons why, when it comes to entertainment media in any form that it is, whether it's television, whether it's film, whether it's literature, comic books, whatever, if you look at some of the greatest stories that stuck with people the longest period of time, I think that they have a tendency to be stories that speak to a higher level of principle values that transcend identity politics. So they don't discuss things dealing with gender, race, sexuality, women, men, whatever. They tend to be about ideas that are bigger than that. And I think
universal.
Yes, universal, exactly. Universal ideas. So when people, like, if you were to ask someone, why would people regard Romeo and Juliet, for example, I'm just plucking that out of my ass, to be such a powerful romance story and tragedy? Well, it's got nothing to do with the fact that the characters are Italian. I think they're Italian, right? The characters. Yeah, I think they are. It's got nothing to do
I
with
don't
that.
remember.
Yeah,
I don't even remember that.
You don't remember Romeo and Juliet? I'm pretty sure they're Italian. But
well,
I mean,
remember the story, but that's what I'm saying.
That's
like,
yeah. The point is,
that.
you don't even recall
like their families, like,
yeah, exactly.
the other elements of the story.
Yes, you can talk about you know, like specific plights if you want to, but I'd like to see when it comes to stories about women or minorities. I would like to see more stories that transcend into universal ideas, universal principles, rather than limiting it to race. So I'm saying you can talk about that stuff. I'm not saying you can't do it. But what I would add is that is almost the only way that you see it in film today. It's about, you know,
it's terrible.
It's about this group, and then the people who do, and I know it's coming from a good place. I know that it's coming from a place of we want to see more representation of these groups of people. I get where that's coming from, but I think it's very limiting in terms of what you can do with the story.
Yeah, well,
go ahead.
I feel as if it actually, I agree that it's coming from a good place, but it actually blocks people's connections, because if they just like made a character and didn't bring it up, like didn't like focus on it, like maybe they put in like 1 or 2 lines, like something like that, but it wasn't like the central focus of the movie, or trying to talk about current politics but through another format or anything like that, I think that maybe some people would attaching it to people in their normal, like current social issues, but I think that it makes it about it. If you make it about the identity, as you say, of the character, then, as you said, it's like saying, well, you can't connect with this person. And it's like the thing that everybody always talks about: when you're younger, you don't really see certain things, and when you look up to characters, that's not really something you pay attention to. And then when you're older, you learn to, I guess, have all these lenses over your eyes about these identities that people carry around with them. And if you make the movie about that, then I feel like you're blocking that connection. That's how it is to me, even though they might be trying to make it so you hear about these people's stories more that are, I guess, underrepresented. But actually, one, the story is probably like a narrative or a myth that some people thought was appropriate and doesn't apply to everybody. So that's the first thing from that certain group. But then also, it shouldn't be that important, I guess, in connecting to another person. It just shouldn't be that important.
No, I think that if you want to connect, let's say that you are telling a story about a black man, and you want, you could do it 2 ways. You can either try to tell the story so that it only connects to other blacks, and then you exclude everybody else, which is what Hollywood does, or you tell the story in such a way that everyone can relate to it because it's a human story at the end of the day, and the color of the character is relatively, if not completely, incidental. So it's
exactly. Incidental. That's a good way to put it. And I know a lot of people are like, I can see it. This is based on my Facebook recently, and they might see like what you just said as actually not wanting to hear the voices of black people. But I don't see that at all. But they might say, well, why can't we talk about it? But if you make it all about that, then it seems like you're saying, no, this is our story. But if you just made the story, put those characters in there, and then like just didn't really go on about all of that, I think you would actually get the effect that you wanted. Than people being annoyed at like political correctness being shoved in their face or whatever. Yeah,
and I think that like the ideology of people who write these stories, it actually gets in the way of their ability to do a really good job. Like when I heard, for example, that they were going to make a female protagonist in Star Wars, the new trilogy that they're currently doing, I knew and I had predicted that they were going to have a lot of challenges telling a good and compelling story that involves, you know, hardship and struggle and character development and arc and everything else, because their ideology informs that they don't want to put the female main character through any trials, right? Like they don't want her to suffer, like they want to protect her. So they write her in such a way that she's just competent at everything, because otherwise it could be construed as sexist if violence is done upon her, if she has a hard time with something, if she has any shortcomings whatsoever, if she begins naive and like grows. They can't do it. Like they just can't. They just don't want to be misogynist. So they just write her as this cipher that just knows how to do whatever the plot needs, because that way they can move forward without being called sexist. And it actually hurts that character. She becomes the least interesting, the least compelling, and nobody roots for her, nobody cares about her. So it just ends up killing everything, and it backfires completely.
Yeah, I actually kind of want to shift topic a little bit.
Okay.
So this came into two things. So one thing came into my mind earlier when you were talking, which was that I have a male friend who pointed something out to me. This was like 4 years ago, maybe. That really made me like appreciate that guys had a different experience. And then there's something else too I want to bring up, but let me say this one first. And I was talking to him about some guy who liked me or something, and he was like approaching me. And I was saying, I think I was saying he was being too shy about it, or I wish he could just be more direct or something. It's
the
like
accent,
that.
Isn't it?
And then
It's the accent, isn't it?
No. No. I mean, no, this was in Jamaica, actually. So it was a Jamaican.
Oh.
And then my friend was like, you have no idea what it's like, Desirae. You just have guys walk up to you all the time, hitting on you, trying to get you to talk to them. You have no idea what it takes to like walk up to a girl and like try to get her attention. And then I was like, you know what? I actually have no idea. And you're absolutely right. And that was like one thing that really stuck in my mind. I don't know why. Because obviously there are other differences too, but that really stuck in my mind because I was there complaining about what this guy was doing. And I was like basically saying that his game was like not good. And my friend was like, shut up, and then another thing too is I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, but I couldn't really do it because I was still doing that job. But I worked for 2 years on fishing boats in the Northeast along the ports. And that's like, I went on boats at like 10 days at a time with all male crews. Most of them were really old. A lot of them had been screwed over by women because they had lots of money, and then the women would like go with the blah, 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 all that stuff. And it just gave me a very interesting experience because it's a very tough job. I wasn't even doing what they were doing, at least where I was. And I was thinking to myself, women would never do this. Like they just would not, I would not see them out there on the boats. I mean, I was there, but I wasn't doing what they were doing. And I guess I'm just trying to say that I think that the male perspective, I don't think it's told enough, because I'm sure men hear all the time about like women's struggle, which is real, but these two things stand out to me because they're things that I never really knew about until I was in a certain situation. My friend pointed it out to me.
When it comes to the male perspective thing you were talking about,
absolutely.
There's absolutely that you don't hear a lot about it. And it's actually, it's interesting that you mentioned the job thing. So one of the things that we talk about, Honey Badger Radio is a men's rights channel. We talk a lot about gender, but we try to, bring attention to men's issues, show you, all of the ways in which men are discriminated against, the problems they face, and trying to like bring the male experience forward so people can see the other side. Because if you go to Twitter, if you go to the news, if you go to television, you go to film, you will see women's struggles everywhere. All of the, and I mean, many of them are legitimate. We can definitely talk about that. But as long as they leave the men out of every equation, which they almost always do, if not always, then you can't accurately measure the discrimination. So, for example, have you ever seen a poster or a public service announcement that says, 3 out of every 10 women are homeless, or no, it's 3 out of every 10 homeless are women, and we need to fix that problem? Have you ever, do you ever seen anything like that?
I haven't. Well, I think I've probably seen something like that, but not that specifically. But what you just said would not surprise me whatsoever if I saw it.
Yeah, so this is something that is commonly touted out, you know, and I've seen people respond to it where they say, "Oh my God, it's terrible that 3 out of every 10 homeless are women." And I'm like, "Yeah, but what about the other 7 that are men?" You know, it's crazy because it's always, these issues are always brought up as though even when women are not doing as poorly in these areas like suicide, for example, men are the winners in suicide, but women attempt it more often. But men succeed far more often, and yet they'll say this is a woman's issue. This is all, and the saddest part is our culture tends to respond to a given problem if they perceive that it affects women more. And yet feminists will tell you that women are the group that is the most oppressed, that's hated by everyone, you know, that they have it so bad. And this is what we do on the show, is we try to respond to that false narrative that is also the most popular one, while at the same time trying to shine light on the issues that men face.
It's getting really dark. I'm sorry. Sorry, I didn't notice it. Sorry.
Oh, it's not that dark. That's good. That's
okay,
good.
It looks super. I glanced and it looks super dark. Yeah, continue.
No, and I was just explaining that that's what we do on our show. That's the focus of our channel. We do talk about race to an extent, but the main thing that we deal with when it comes to racial issues is, at least for my part, I try to look at it like a lot of the problems that people claim are the product of racism, I think they are more so gendered towards men. For example, have you ever noticed that Black Lives Matter will often try to make the case for, you know, racist, brutal police, but their examples, they'll claim that because if you go to the website, you'll see that they embrace third wave feminism, and intersectionality is at the core of Black Lives Matter's belief system. So in their mind, they believe that women have it worse than men. Therefore, black women have it worse than black men under Black Lives Matter's belief system. However, the overwhelming majority of victims of both black on black crime as well as police crime on, or, you know, police brutality is on black men. Most of the time when there is an injustice done to black men, like, you know, driving while black or whatever, has more to do with the fact that they're male than it does to do with the fact that they're black. And you can look up statistics for men of other races that are incarcerated unfairly or affected by police brutality. You'll see that the numbers for men in general are much higher than the numbers for women. So I think that, not to say that racism doesn't exist, because obviously it does, but I think that a lot of what Black Lives Matter tries to make into a race issue is actually likely more of a gender issue, or at least that plays a larger part, a part that they want to ignore because they usually want to make women and LGBT people more like a victim of, you know, this sort of white supremacy than black men. Do you follow?
Yeah, I'm following. I missed the last bit you said. They usually want to make what people more a victim of?
Like other, like non-men groups. Like they focus on other aspects of identity. So it's either black women, or it's trans women, or it's you know, lesbians, or whatever.
The audio just cut out for a bit. That's why I didn't hear.
Yeah.
No, actually, I never really thought about that in terms of unit as against men when you talk about, for example, traffic stops, I think, or incarceration. But I did my own somewhat of research on Black Lives Matter, and it was very interesting to me to see what you called third wave feminism. On their website, it was pretty blatant that it was coming from that viewpoint, which I didn't really know if I was just listening to the media until I went and like look at their principles, I guess. No, I've never really thought about that. In general, I don't like using identity in order to claim suffering. I think that certain groups might, you know, be more inclined to suffer in this specific way, but it's never confined to that group. It just never works like that. And so I don't think it makes sense to do that. And I'd rather people focus on the actual thing, which I think may not happen for a very, very long time in the United States, if ever. But I think it makes much more sense to focus on the actual issues and then see it impact this specific group more than the other group, even though you're not focusing on the group itself, but
yes,
it will end up benefiting that group. Yeah.
Yes, and actually the thing about BLM that really upsets me is that they use male deaths to promote their ideology while at the same time claiming that men are part of the problem. And it actually really upsets me because the problem is far more complicated than that. I have a super chat I want to read real quick before it disappears. If I can, for some reason it won't open. Hoki Bukisa sent us a super chat. I got to see if I can look at it. Hold on just a second because I can't look at it here. Oh, I know. I got it. Let me just scroll up. I'll just scroll up. What a beautiful idea. Okay, Hoki Bukisa gives us $5 and says, everyone's head would probably explode if they were made to date the sex opposite of what they are used to. Example, straight woman date a straight woman. Okay, I don't know what to say to that, but thanks for the super chat. If you guys have any questions
I think what that person said was interesting. I don't know what to say either, but I thought it was very interesting. It's making me consider that.
Yeah, no, definitely. If you guys have any questions for Desirae or me, I guess either just put in a super chat and I will read it. The one thing I wanted to also say was about BLM. Oh no, it's about the Black community. So a little bit about myself. I am Puerto Rican, and I'm the first generation of my family born here in the States. I was born in Chicago in a neighborhood called Humboldt Park, when at the time, Humboldt Park was a very, very low income, gang infested, neighborhood, mostly Black and Hispanic. Overwhelmingly so. I think there was like one Vietnamese family that lived in the corner, but everybody else is Black or Hispanic. And I was around that stuff my whole life. I've always lived in a rougher part of Chicago. I still live in Humboldt Park now, but the neighborhood is changing. It's a lot more gentrified. So, it's not as bad as it used to be. And my experience with the problems facing the Black community, I think, are a direct product of the feminist movement. And I think it's actually a bigger problem than anything else that could be. And I also believe that the Black community, at least in Chicago, if not everywhere, is what I call the canary in the coal mine, which means what is affecting them now will affect everyone else in time if we allow the belief system of the feminist movement to continue. And that is, they have destroyed the Black family for the most part. Something like 77% of children in the Black community born today are born without a father, out of wedlock, the whole business. So, and
I've looked into that a lot, actually.
You have looked into that. So you know that's now, I believe that's the main issue. Like, I think everything else, like girls that hit puberty they hit puberty earlier because there's no man in the home. And so their body responds to the fact that there's no father around, and they actually mature early and they become sexually active earlier. So they hit puberty earlier. Men who don't have fathers around, they grow up and they immediately try to bond with someone like a father figure. And so they end up more prone to joining gangs and essentially learning about the world through their peers who know about as much about it as they do than they do from an actual father, because there isn't one present. The mother is overworked. She can't possibly keep track of these kids. She's also encouraged by the welfare state to have more of them, to benefit from them, and so she does. And again, I think this is a big problem. And the men that they choose to sleep with, they're not men that are fit to be good fathers. And plus, if the women aren't holding them to some standard, it's a lot easier for those men to not try to rise to that standard, right? If it doesn't exist. Now, if there's anything that you disagree with, feel free to jump in. And
no, I'm not. I want to jump in even though I'm not disagreeing.
No, go ahead.
I have looked into a lot of what you're saying. And I don't have, I think these things do apply to other Black communities, like maybe say the Caribbean. There's also issues of fatherless homes, even though I think the big difference is they don't blame the rest of society for it. But so I wanted to point that out, because sometimes I don't like it when people talk about the Black community, but they actually mean specific Black community.
I'm directing it. I was just going to say that when I talk about it, I'm talking about I was just pointing out that when I talk about it, I'm talking about Blacks in the United States because it's what I know. I mean, if it's happening in the UK or in the Caribbean or wherever, then I guess that could be used to support my argument. But I don't want to talk about places I don't know about. So,
I know, but that's what I'm saying, because when you say that, it automatically includes other places because you're just saying Black people. Community.
Okay. I thought when okay. Well, to be clear, I mean the U.S., but go on.
Yeah, I know. I knew you did. Oh, right. I was just getting a little bit sad because I don't have much experience, but I very distinctly remember meeting someone from, I think, what you would call like one of the communities you were talking about. And people get so offended when you try and say things like what you're saying, like this is the most important issue and it involves a lot of criticism and they don't want to hear it, or some of them do want to hear it. But I just feel like there's so much pain in this little area and people don't want to talk about it. And what I was trying to bring up was meeting this guy who I kind of worked with briefly. He was talking about his mom, and I can't remember all the details. But the way he was behaving, and like when he was talking about certain things with his home life, but it's kind of like people say things and they're not trying to give themselves away, but just from the way they say it, you can infer that things were really difficult for them or things like that. And there was just so much like sadness, like I could just see it like on him sort of, and I couldn't really do anything about it because it was very personal. And like that bothers me because like that is going totally unresolved because people have too much pride.
Yes.
You know, because they see it as like an attack.
Yes.
Which it can be. There are some people who are derogatory and they're like, oh, you people can't keep your communities together or whatever. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's still like a big issue that really needs to be solved.
Yeah, I mean,
for a good reason.
I know that it's not easy to talk about, and that's the thing. Like, I get it, but that is, I think, the source of most of those problems, or at the very least, I would say, because I have, I had a Black friend, and we used to argue a lot about what the solution should be, and he agreed with me that the family was a problem, but he didn't think it was as important a problem as I did, and I still think that if you fix that, and I mean, you've read Thomas Sowell, and I'm assuming that you're familiar with works from other people like that are very that bring this topic up, and of course they get lots of hate for it. I mean, from within the community that they're trying to help, like who's another one? Walter E. Williams, as well as why can't I remember this guy's name? He was on the Rubin Report, and he got into an argument with Larry Elder. Yeah, exactly. Larry Elder? Yes, yeah. And Jesse Lee Peterson, and so many others. And the thing is, Jesse
Peterson, by the way, I mean, I don't love him. I love like his bond program. Yeah, I don't know if you know. It's I forget what it stands for.
I think Jesse Lee Peterson interviewed Allison and Karen once, but I never saw the show. I gotta like try to find it because he talked to two of our people. We want to get him on. We want to get all these people on. I want to get this going, and I know that it's a tough thing to talk about. We've also had Tommy Sotomayor on, and he also believes that as well. That the problem is with the family, and I'm glad that they're identifying it. Now, yes, we can probably can we find a better way to bring this up? Sure, but I think that inevitably you're going to hurt people's feelings, and there are people who have a special interest in not fixing the problem that will make it about you hurting people's feelings as a way to keep you from talking about it. And I think that it goes back to perhaps it goes back to my respect rant about being a good guy versus being a nice guy. Maybe people need to hear the truth even if it hurts, not because you take any joy from hurting them, but because the truth can hurt. But that doesn't mean that once you like make peace with it and you know what it is, what the problem is, you can try to address it. You can try to talk about solutions. And I think it comes down to, this is going to sound weird, but you empower Black women by letting them know how much influence they have over the future of, the Black community in the US, at least. Like, because of their choices of who they sleep with, because of their choices as to when they want to like father or mother a child, things like that.
Control black women's bodies or something like that. That's what people. That's how people would respond to that.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Like, you don't have any right to tell women what to do with their body. Like that's totally what would happen.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. But...
I think that's.
And it's it's frustrating because you want to help people, but it's like people's comfort, like that they want to feel, seems to trump the truth. And that's really sad and unfortunate because we could certainly do better than that.
We should do better than that. And I think that's kind of something that I think kind of keeps me going a bit with my channel. I was just talking to somebody else who I did an interview with, but it hasn't come out yet. And he was like, oh, I'm getting all this backlash. What do I do? And I was like, nicely, like once you start any sort of criticism, you're going to get it, so you just have to live with it. And I think what keeps me going is that it's really important for like what happens in the future. I may not think it is, but I'm like one little drop and I like the pool of voices,
I think personally the problems between men and women are the most important problems. I think they're actually more important than issues of race or left and right politics or other identity issues. I think that when you fix if you fix the divide, and it's a growing chasm between men and women. I mean, men and women fear each other a lot today. Like men fear what women will accuse them of. Women just fear men, for how dangerous they are made out to be. And I think it creates... It's a huge problem, and I think that if we can fix the chasm that divides men and women, we can fix everything else. Would just fix itself, or at least they will be far more manageable than they are right now. And I think that's one of the reasons why things are getting out of control. People are trying so hard to identify with something, whether it's a political group or their gender or their race or their nation, and they I think are losing sight of or they never had the one tribe that probably matters the most, and that's their most immediate one, their family. Yeah, it's to me, it's just Marxism, but in another form. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe I should say tribalism. I mean, yeah,
not tribalism either, but like the idea of oppression. And even with the guys, they can also be exploited to think that women just hate them and whatever. And it's just so easy whenever there is misunderstanding, which there is, because it's kind of natural, because these groups, if you're talking about race or gender, they do have differences and they like experience of life, not separately, but there are certain perspectives that one will have that the other will not have. And all you have to do is just poke and poke and poke at those differences. And it's just too easy to do. And sometimes I feel like it's impossible to not, like, I don't know how to stop someone from just coming along and being like, problem, they're the problem. They're the reason you have this problem. You should hate it. I just feel like it's just too easy. I don't know like how to resolve that.
It's tough. I agree. I mean, it comes, I think the first thing that has to happen is we have to be able to be honest about identifying it. And, I say this not under the assumption that I know exactly what I'm talking about. I want to put it on the table and say, this is what I think the problem is, and then invite other people to put stuff on the table to say, no, I think it's this, and then let's look at the evidence for everything and try to figure out what the truth is so that we know where to direct our attention, And so that's what I try to do when I do this show. That's what I want to do. I want to try to figure out what the problem is. And currently, I believe it's got a lot to do with the relations between men and women. And can we fix that? Can we repair those issues? And Allison's made a lot of great videos, and she's working on a series right now that will go into, why she believes it and what we can do. So
yeah, I was about to ask you, like, do you know what solutions or strategies?
Well, one of the things that we're like, I can give you an abstract idea. What we got to do is we got to stop with the we got to get out of what we call the church of women worsting, which is the belief that no matter what happens in the world, no matter what the conditions are, women are somehow uniquely disadvantaged or they suffer and they have no agency of their own whatsoever. And we have to also be able to recognize the vulnerability and the potential victimization of men as just men in general versus women. Not to say that men are uniquely disadvantaged, but to say that there are areas in which men have are being victimized, and there are areas in which women are being victimized, as well as there are areas in which men have agency and the ability to change things, and women also have agency. So we have to treat them as whole people. And feminism claims to do that, but it doesn't. Its whole premise is built on the idea that men have built all of society for the benefit of other men and at the expense of women, and we have to shake that belief system because it's not true, even if it looks like it. Like you were just talking about that job where you worked in the on boats, right? And you were saying women would never want to do this job. Well, what jobs are feminists fighting for women to do? Well, they want them to work in these not that job, right? They want more women politicians, women CEOs, women queens. They want more women in the higher upper echelons of power. They want women in the corporate world. They want women in STEM. They want women in the stuff that's very prestigious, that pays well, that, you know, provides great success. But when it comes to things like, you know, working on shipyards, Alaskan crab fishermen, oil rigs, the military, maybe somewhat. But anything that's dangerous or unappealing, working in sewers, throwing out garbage.
I think like that, what you're describing is pretty awful. Like once I really saw that, I think that's really awful. That like women, it's like they're crying about not having the freedom to do things, which I think was kind of true in the past. But there's no attention whatsoever given to all the stuff that men basically do.
Yes.
That nobody else wants to do. It's really bad.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean that's just it. That's the way feminism works. It's always top-down solutions. It's always looking at the it looks at the world through a lens that only sees the top and sees men up there and presumes that that is where men sit, even though there are far more men at the very bottom. But it never looks. Men are the majority of the homeless. Men are the majority of the ones doing the worst jobs. Men are the majority, you know, they're doing construction, they're doing sewer work and so on. But feminists don't see that. They just see Fortune 500 companies that feature men that are in like, you know, the upper fraction of 1% of all people, and they say that's where the men are and we should have women up there. And that it's completely ridiculous. So going back to what, go ahead.
Something that I don't really understand though. I mean, I have my very specific experience of being on a boat, but even before I did that, I've never, ever, ever liked the idea of, like I said before, some groups suffer. Only some groups, arbitrary groups, depending on how society is feeling at a certain time period, are suffering and nobody else is. So I don't really understand why people can't just look around them and be like, well, this is obviously not true.
Well, I agree. I see what you're saying. It makes sense. However, that's the weird thing when it comes to men is that they're actually what they go through is largely ignored. It's invisible. It's not that like it's visible if you're paying attention, but I think a lot of women don't. A lot of people. I'm going to say women. A lot of people, men and women, just don't see it. They see construction workers. They see sewer workers. They see people on you know. They're washing the windows on a skyscraper. They don't think that's a man doing that job. We should be grateful for that because he's taking a risk. They when they hear stories about soldiers that die in war and they say we lost these many people, they don't think about how many men that is. You know, like it's just one. No,
at one point.
Yes, you know what?
I definitely.
Yeah. No, I think it's actually normal. And it probably has evolved evolutionarily for our benefit to not think of men as disposable, because they have largely been disposable for history, because that's how we've been able to get this far. So some men had to be able to risk or throw their lives away so that the rest of society can move forward. It's not, I'm not making them a victim. This is just the reality of our history. I think that this is part of the reason why male suffering is invisible, because it's handy to us. It has a utility.
And the same thing for female, I guess, like being precious and to be taken care of. It's the same, because they're the children and blah, blah, blah.
You mean like, for women to raise children?
No, as you're saying, it was useful for men to be disposable. And I'm saying, and the opposite is true. It was also useful for women to not be.
Yes, absolutely. We had to protect them because they make babies and we need babies, right? Yeah. So we tend to value that more. I mean, it makes sense. So these are the things that we want to try to bring back, because there were times where we used to honor maleness in the same way that we might have honored femaleness today, but we don't honor maleness these days. So it's just, think of it like this. And I'm not saying this has as much value, because I know there are people, MGTOW, that would have a problem with this, but think of it this way. There was a time where if a man died in war, we would honor them for what they did, for the sacrifice they made. They would get that, right? If a man was a good father to his kids, we would honor that. We would give that the respect it deserves. If you look at the history of ancient Rome, there was a lot of honoring of maleness, as an aspect. Now, I don't think this is not about worship. This is not about putting it above women. This is about honoring it for the value that it brings. But I think that today, especially in the mainstream media and academia and all these other places, maleness is a thing to be shamed. If we go online and we bring up the problems that men face, you'll get a lot of, cry more, male, let me drink your male tears, that kind of thing. Because there is a great deal of disdain for issues facing men, while at the same time, they claim that men should be able to open up about their feelings and, so that they don't have any more school shootings or whatever their logic is. So.
Yeah, I know someone who was telling me about, he was sexually abused, and he was telling me about trying to tell some people on Facebook, and they basically just shouted him down because he was female. Like, that actually happened. Yeah, which is insane. I mean, kind of insane.
Look at this. Corey Feldman, the actor, he's been talking about pedophilia in Hollywood since the 1990s, I think, if not the 80s. He's been trying to talk about it for decades, and no one listened until a woman came forward and accused Harvey Weinstein. And then all of a sudden, everything, like, a woman comes forward and now everyone wants to get involved and figure it out. And Corey Feldman's been talking about it for decades. There was even a documentary made about pedophilia in Hollywood that affects boys. I can't remember the name of the movie, but there's a documentary out there. And I watched it and I was like, I couldn't believe how bad it was. But there's no hashtag, there's no investigation, nobody was talking about it, nobody cared until a woman came forward. And all of a sudden, Hollywood cares. And so, I mean, if it solves the problem, that's great, but you have to look at what was necessary to get people to pay attention. Have you ever seen a film? Yeah. There was a film documentary made about the men's rights movement by Cassie J recently called The Red Pill. Have you heard of this movie?
I actually have not watched it, but I've heard a lot about it, and I haven't seen it. I mean to.
Yes, please do. I think it will give you an idea of what we're talking about and why this is important to us as a topic. And the thing is, too, this is not a exclusionary movement. Like, the men's movement does also care about women's issues, and we think that these things they're interwoven. Think of it like that. Like, men and women are not the opposite sex. They are the complementary sex. What happens to men affects women, and what happens to women affects men too. So we have to look at it that way. And the fact is, I am a men's advocate and I am a woman's advocate. And I think that the movements that claim to be the movement that cares about equality, the movement that cares about women, doesn't. It doesn't care about women. Feminism doesn't care about women or men. Feminism cares about feminism. And it does.
Yeah.
It only wants to perpetuate itself, because the goal of any movement should be to make itself obsolete. And feminism has been around since the 1800s, and it hasn't gone away. So
yeah. I want to point something, well, I kind of point something out / ask something. Do you think that what if the men's rights movement is super successful? Do you think it could morph into what feminism is today? Even though it came from.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I doubt it. I doubt it, because here's the thing. I don't think that you could have androcentrism. So you know what gynocentrism is?
Yes.
Okay. So the opposite of that would be androcentrism. I doubt that we could actually have a society that's androcentric. I don't think that we could live in a world where we hold men to such a higher value that we want to protect them to this degree. I don't think that's possible.
I also think women still basically, I feel bad saying it, but choose men. So I feel like they'll kind of have to, they can't do that because women have power in that regard. Like it would be not in their reproductive interests.
Yeah. And
so,
I think,
you're kind of, I know that you were pointing out.
Yeah, I don't think it could possibly happen, but I do think that what we could hope for at best is to make things at least equal in the law. And the cultural part, the societal part, because we're more concerned with the legal part, I think, but there is a cultural aspect that we want to work on. The best we can do is essentially make a society, or try to build a society that is compassionate towards men, that thinks of them not in terms of their utility, but as in terms of their humanity. And this would also involve us treating women in terms of their humanity, and not as victim objects that we use to manipulate policy and, make our government bigger or whatever. And so that's exactly
how I feel about that's exactly how I feel about racial issues. It's like the one thing that everybody has in common is that we're all human, we're all individuals. Like that should be the thing that is focused on in trying to help society. It should be the individual, not because we're only individuals, even though I personally am more of an individualist. I recognize that people might have their identities that they love and they want to cling to, and that's okay. But like when it comes to like society's institutions, it should be about the individual.
Yep.
Because that's something that we all share. Like as you said, the humanity that we all have.
Yes. So that's I hope my answer about your question was answered to your satisfaction.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
Okay. Well, we should probably wrap up soon. I am enjoying this conversation, so we did go a little longer than I expected.
I don't know how long it's been.
It's been almost close to an hour and a half now. So we've been going for a bit. But is there any questions that you want to ask me still?
How long have you been doing your channel? I feel like I did look when I went to your channel. I think it was 4 years I saw on like the YouTube thing.
Honey Badger Radio is at least 4 years old, but I've been doing Honey Badger Radio for about 3, maybe 3 years and change. But because I think when I got involved, Honey Badger Radio was doing podcasts before that on a different space, so it's older. But it was still pretty new on the YouTube space when they brought me on board. And so, yeah, I've been doing this for about 3 years and change. And we're still only at about, like a little under 50 grand on subs. We should have just been a feminist channel. I'd be so rich right now. I'd be so rich. I don't know why I chose.
I feel like there's support for this kind of stuff. Like,
yeah.
You know what? I really think that people have to make it somehow. I'm like an old person just saying this, which I'm not at all, but somehow make it hip, and cool. Like I really feel like
what we're not cool.
The arguments are not enough. Like that sounds horrible, but like I feel like if you really want to have a presence in the collective human consciousness, you got to be cool.
Well, I mean,
to like really like capture the wave and spread.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm probably the coolest person on Honey Badger Radio, to be honest. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm probably the coolest, but you know, everybody's just holding me back. Otherwise, I'd be on the Rubin Report right now, getting him to agree with me. No, I'm kidding. But
how many other people are? You said it was you, Allison,
yes.
And Karen. That's all I heard. Are there more people? Or that's...
Yeah. So the original Honey Badgers that are still on here is Hannah Wallen, Allison Tiemann, and Karen Strawn. And then we have and then we have Anna Cherry, who is a cam girl that also does shows with us sometimes. She's a very sex positive. And then there's the men. There's me. There's Mike Stephenson, also known as Dr. Ranimer Cam. He has his own channel. It's very successful. And there is Max Darrett, who helps me on the news show, and he does breaking news shows every so often. And then we have like Prim Reaper, who's another woman, Prim Reaper. And then we have occasional guests. For example, Aiden Paladin. I don't know if you know who she is, but she has her own channel. It's also pretty good. Yeah, I love Aiden. And we have had other Teal Deer sometimes comes on. So we have people who come on every so often. And we're actually looking for more. So maybe if you're interested, you'd like to come on our show sometime as a guest. Guys in the chat, let me know if you think that Desirae would make a great guest. I do. I like the way she thinks. So
nice.
Yeah. Just because what we tend to do is we might either discuss a specific topic, like what Hannah's been working on is a series called the Accountability Gap, which is essentially female accountability, which is talking about the ways in which we essentially treat women like children and let them behave in irresponsible ways and don't hold them accountable, or at least this is what how she frames it, and what the consequences of doing that are. And then there's a news show where we just say, here is some crazy stuff that's happened. Let's talk about it. You know, like there was a story I saw that I'm going to be talking about tomorrow where there's a university that has essentially banned memes. They've banned offensive memes. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It was like, I'll tell you the name of the article here.
Yeah.
I'll dig it up here.
Well, what's the name of the university? Do you remember the name of the university?
I'm going to tell you in just a second. How universities are policing memes. York University. Cracking offensive jokes in a private chat can land you in serious trouble. So even private memes can be policed by certain universities, and one of them is York. But there are others, several universities, in fact, that are policing memes. And I thought that's just, how can I pass that up? I mean, yeah, illegal memes. So yeah, go ahead.
Something that I'm getting into the cryptocurrency space. It's just like something new that I'll be doing, even though it's pretty small right now. And I really have a hope for, you know, people using platforms that aren't really able to be censored in the way that the platforms that we currently have are just being, in my opinion, abused by people in power who hold certain ideologies.
Okay.
So I hope that makes I hope that makes a difference. I am actually, if you look at my Twitter, a lot of my tweets are like me ranting against YouTube because I'm just so annoyed at. That's actually something that really got me into my channel, was this idea that I'm a Black woman, I'm like super oppressed or whatever, but if I want to say something, it has to be the right thing. You know, like that pisses me off to you, like you have no idea. It's like,
yeah,
how dare you like use me and my image and then shut me up? Like, how dare you? Like, that's how I feel about that. So I'm very sort of passionate about that.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. We've talked about that on our show too, the YouTube stuff. We've been following it because we've also been the victim of lots of YouTube shenanigans. And yeah, it's really annoying. That's why we actually stream to multiple spots now, because of the YouTube stuff, because we think it's only a matter of time before they just shut us down, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to look into other spaces.
Yeah, good idea. Try well, vid.me is dead, but try we do Twitch for live streams. and you could do Vimeo. I think that's a place. Vimeo. There are other places. I'm sorry?
I don't really feel like people go on Vimeo for like this, for this kind of content.
No,
it's
no.
more posh. Like I go there to watch animations, like artistic animations or something. Like that's what I associate Vimeo with. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I get that. I don't know where else you would go. Maybe you have to do live shows from now on, like Scott Adams, and just go on Twitter, Periscope, and just rant there or something.
Yeah, I've never really used those. We'll see.
We'll see. Can you do live?
Not gonna happen. Like live stuff. I mean, I'm doing it now pretty much.
You are, and you're doing fine.
But
yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. You know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give the chat a chance to ask a question, just one. I'll pick one from the chat at random for Desirae. And Desi, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to ask you, like, what is this thing your camera has been doing the entire time?
Oh,
is that like a...
The camera is like one of those autofocus tracking cameras. So if I move a little closer, it tries to zoom in. If I back off. And
I thought it was like a special effects that keep my attention or something.
No, the camera's just doing its own thing.
Okay.
Okay, so Improv Man says, cats or dogs? That's a good question. I was going to ask that. Cats or dogs?
Cats or dogs? Oh, well, I really like cats, but I also want... Okay, so like right now, I want a cat. I don't have one, but I've lived with cats before, so I really like cats. But I always think of having a dog when I have a family. So I don't know. Maybe that's not really a choice. But right now, I would say cats.
What about burbs?
Burbs? What are burbs?
Burbs. They go in a burb cage, and they you don't.
Birds. I don't get it. Sorry.
Birds. You can have a bird.
Oh, birds. I had a friend, a very close friend that had a bird, and they were kind of nice. A very stable location, but I'm not like super big, like a super big fan or anything. But birds are nice.
Yeah, they're okay. I'm not a big fan either, but I'm a dog person, so. But you're all right. You're all right, anyways.
But dogs are like totally different energy, you know, which is nice. So I just feel like you have to give them lots of attention, and they give you lots back and lots of love, which is super nice. But you have to be in the right place in your life to welcome that.
Yeah, I feel that feel, but I'm literally a dog person, so. Okay, well, thank you so much, Desirae, for coming on. I'm glad that we had this conversation, and I hope that it was enjoyable for you as it was for me. I want to thank you guys. Okay, great. I want to thank you guys that are watching for joining us on this live stream. If you have any additional questions or comments for Desirae, just leave them in the comments section, and let me know what you thought about this conversation. Desirae, if I asked you to come back on, would you come back?
Probably. Why not? Yes.
Okay. There we go. Yeah. That's great. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us on this what do you call it? Installment? This episode of the Fireside Chat. And we will talk to you guys